Well, Syria is a major exporter of oil and gas, and it's those resources and several other economic restrictions that are at the heart of the international sanctions. Let's take a look now at Syria's major trading partners. In 2010, the European Union was Syria's biggest trading partner, accounting for 22.5% of Syrian trade. Its neighbour, Iraq, is second with 13.3%. Saudi Arabia is next with 9% of trade with Syria. China's trade accounts for nearly 7%. Turkey, which has just imposed sanctions on Syria, is its fifth biggest trading partner with 6.6%. And then Lebanon with 6.1%. Well, EU sanctions against Syria has the potential to do the most damage. Nearly 90% of Syria's oil exports went to the EU. That was before September's ban. Well, crude materials account for 4.1%, followed by 2.9% in manufactured goods. Well, Hirsh is a Middle East economist at Capital Economics, which is an independent research company. He joins us live now from London. Hirsh, we're seeing an increasing number of sanctions being levelled at Syria. Turkey announced more this week, as we know, but Syria, of course, has been sanctioned for so long. The country has become increasingly self-sufficient, has it not? I mean, can Syria withstand these sanctions, do you think?
It all really depends on what the ultimate objective of these sanctions will be. Can it withstand sanctions? Yes, it can. It can definitely withstand it for some time. I mean, if you look around the world at other countries who have been under much harsher sanctions over the past few years. I mean, they're still there, and the regimes of these countries are still there. I mean, next to Syria, of course, Iraq was under very heavy UN sanctions all through the 90s. Its economy nearly collapsed, but the regime did not go until a military intervention happened. So in terms of will the sanctions affect Syria's economy, we think they will definitely affect it, and Syria will go through a deterioration over the next year or so. But that doesn't mean that the regime would go, I think. But it will be under heavy pressure for sure.
So let's just talk about the actual impact of those sanctions economically, which is the point you're making. I mean, many of the sanctions are being levelled now at the gas and oil sector, the energy sector in Syria. What's your assessment then of the potential economic damage, particularly to the value of Syria's currency?
I think to start with, if we look at Syria's foreign earnings, starting with tourism, for instance, a key foreign currency earner for Syria. That's obviously, with or without sanctions, that had been hit very, very hard. So if you add to that trade sanctions, so export earnings, another foreign earner as well for Syria, through oil or any other commodity, but obviously primarily it's oil. Then you have a very, very heavy pressure on Syria's currency, and Syria's central bank or Syria's government had already intervened somehow to ban certain imports before, which in some way will also affect production in Syria. So in terms of the economic effect overall, it's very large. In terms of its currency, the effect will be very heavy as well. It will be under a lot of pressure, and also what happens in the black market in terms of foreign currency trading outside the official channels. So Syria as a country and its currency are under very, very heavy pressure.
I think most experts would agree, and that's the point you're making as well, that the EU's oil import ban will hit the Syrian economy the hardest side. I mean, it's worth about 20% of its GDP or something like that. It's also forced Syria, though, to cut oil production. How badly will the regime feel the pressure then on this all-important, this critical energy sector?
I mean, it will hit its revenues extremely hard. Its ability to function in terms of internally, the government spending plans will be affected. It will depend, though. I think we need to be careful because again, there are also trade sanctions against it, but it doesn't mean that it still cannot sell oil, because it might find other buyers, which will sort of cushion the blow on Syria's revenues. So it's again, it has a very large border towards Iraq. You mentioned before its trade with Iraq. It's very likely that trade will still go on with Iraq, even if there are Arab trade sanctions. And it has Lebanon, and it has a very large maritime coast. So if, let's say, China or Russia do not really abide by these sanctions, it could still trade with other countries. It's very difficult to effectively enforce sanctions when your major neighbors or some trade partners would still trade with you. I mean, there is no doubt that the Syria's economy will be devastated by this, especially amongst its production. You mentioned oil and other sectors. And Syria's business community, which probably the ones closest to the regime, would feel the brunt of this. But there are mechanisms that will cushion the blow for them, I think,
Okay.
at least in the near term.
All right, Said Hirsh, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera.